I definitely have a more traditional background in terms of where I studied. Like I studied at USC for my bachelor's, then I went to Juilliard, then now I'm at Columbia. So I definitely have a very traditional trajectory for a composer, especially in the 21st century. And I definitely probably call myself a composer with a capital C, if there's such a thing. I definitely still write by hand. I write with a piano or I guess an electric keyboard. So I definitely am like very much struck by string quartets, solo music, duos, trios, orchestra music, that kind of thing. Not so much opera right now because it's just such a huge undertaking to take. And so that hasn't really been on my mind, but everything else in terms of like those typical genres of Western classical music I'm really into. But as far as the music that I really enjoy writing, it has more to do with how do I take my Arabic heritage, my Lebanese and Jordanian background, and kind of rediscover it through the music that I'm writing every day. So for me, that's like the project. It's almost like going back to my past, but I'm doing it through what I know, which is how to write music, or at least I think I know how to write music. I actually never even traveled to the Middle East, believe it or not. And I can conversate in Arabic, so it's not like a language I could speak on a regular basis. But for me, it's just so interesting to see that my parents moved to the United States. I was born in the United States. I have two younger brothers. They were both born in the United States. And for me, it's so interesting to know that there was like a completely different life for like hundreds, if not thousands of years. And I even did that, like, did you know the 23andMe ancestry site? Do you have this in the Netherlands? So I did this a few years ago, and it came out 99.9%, from the Levantine area in the Middle East. And I just thought it was ridiculous because, my accent is not Arab in any way. I don't wear any sort of clothing like they do over there. Although over there it's very westernized now, especially in Lebanon. I'm not fluent in the language. I can't read and write in the language, but my blood is completely from that area. So I just think it's interesting to also discover through music, which is also like this kind of thing that you can't really see. Ancestry also, in a way, you can't really see. You can't really see my blood or where it was from. And the same thing with music, you can't really see it. So to kind of go between those two worlds while I'm writing, for me, it's like the area where I could do so freely. Because for me to conversate or to read something, I can't do it quite easily. But with music, I feel like, okay, I understand what I'm hearing from this part of the world. And the most important part is not just that I understand it, that's almost ancillary, is that I really enjoy it. And I really love listening to the music. And it really hits me in a certain way that no other music quite does. So to figure out how to incorporate that in all the training and education that I've learned over the years, going to conservatory even before that, to me, it's like, it just makes sense for the way that I grew up and the way that I went through the education system. So for me, it makes sense. And if it makes sense to me, that's all that it matters to. And if it touches somebody else, that's just a bonus. Well, I have no idea what it was like composing music 100 years ago, 200 years ago, or 500 years ago. So I don't know in terms of the relationship between then and now, I have no idea. I can only speak on what's happening now. But for me, I think today it's the most exciting time to be a composer with all the different technology that we have, all the different resources, the number of orchestras, the number of institutions that are out there, the number of people that want to be professional musicians, not just composers, but also musicians, the amount of interconnectivity we have between the world. For example, me going to the Netherlands to be part of this festival, 100 years ago even, it wouldn't have been that possible to easily just fly over there and then come back to the States and continue with my work. So, I'm very optimistic that, music can only benefit from all this cultural exchange that's going on. And the technology, if you use it the right way, it could be a real help to you. So for me, this is like the best time to compose. And, of course, during the pandemic, these things, all these different interconnectivity things, especially physically, obviously went away, and the live aspect. But now that we're getting back to having the live aspect, and now that we've started to learn how to use technology a little bit better, hopefully those two things will start to bloom now that we're getting out of this period. Composition itself for me, doesn't lend itself to a quick digestion. Let's put it that way. Especially people that want to be composers. I mean, they really want to sit down. They really want to take it in, either a long piece or, for me, what it is, it's educational videos about how to do certain things in the composition business or how to apply to school, that kind of thing. And then on the other side that I've been doing, which I've started to do a lot more, is to have my friends over that are around my age, that are a little further along in the composing world, and to get their experiences about what their life is like. So it's not like a very formal interview at all. Like we sit actually right there on the carpet, and we sit there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we just talk. And it's not prepared. I have no questions. I listen to a few of their pieces just to remember what their music sounds like, because sometimes it's been a while. But literally, we just, I have them over, we sit down, we talk about whatever is on our mind, and then whoever watches. On the most basic level, yes, I mean, collaboration is the number one thing. I was just on a call yesterday with a harpist, figuring out a project that we both want to work on. And, so I'm constantly in touch with musicians, and I feel like, if I'm the type of composer that I want them to be involved as much as possible, but at the end of the day, it's my piece. It has my name on it. I'm the one writing the notes down, but I want to have their input as much as I possibly can. So with the smaller pieces, that's how I do it. With the larger pieces, especially the orchestra pieces, I actually take the opposite approach, because I have a feeling that, in the long run, these orchestras, they have such limited rehearsal time that I want to make sure that everything that I write is so clear that I don't have to ever explain it in person or on the phone or however. I want it to be like a piece that kind of just exists as if I didn't even write it. It's just there, and they can just do it if they want to do it, and have me as little involved as possible in the process. So again, it depends on the relationship I have with the institution and what I know that they can expect from me and what they don't expect from me. When I'm working with a soloist or I'm working with a small chamber group, I feel like it's really important to have that back and forth, because that's my avenue for experimentation. And that's my way of figuring out, okay, what are the new compositional tools I can use in my language? Because by the time I get to orchestra, it's too late. I can't really experiment too much. I need to take what I learned from the solo and chamber music and apply it to the orchestra, rather than experimenting at this grand level. And then if it doesn't work, everything falls apart. So my piece, Aruah, it means souls in Arabic. And this is my response to just living during the COVID-19 pandemic. I've never written a response piece like this, actually, my first time, but I thought it was really important, and it made sense with what I wanted to do in the piece. So this piece is an octet that I wrote for the International Contemporary Ensemble. And the main idea about this piece is, how do I use the breath within the ensemble? What does the breath mean? So they do literally breathe, right, into, I think during this performance it was into their masks. And there was some kind of breathing sounds that were happening with the tam-tam and some of the other instruments as this was going on. And then in combination with this, I wanted to figure out from a musical perspective, what is the role of harmony in my music? Which is something I've been trying to avoid for many years, because in Arab music, there's not really such a thing as harmony, especially when you compare it to functional tertian harmony in Western music. So this was my question. So it was this combination of, in the musical side, what does harmony mean? And really try to answer that. And then at the same time, what is my response to the pandemic as an artist? How can I implement this in the piece? So it's these two things together that really shaped the way that this piece grew. I have absolutely no idea what I'm gonna do. I feel like once I get to meet the musicians virtually and listen to a lot of their music, I'll have an idea of what they like to do, what they don't like to do, what they're interested, what they're not interested in. And this will shape the way that I write the piece. At the end of the day, it's my piece, but I also want to write a piece that they feel like they need in their catalog. Maybe they need a piece that is more fast-paced. Maybe they need a piece that incorporates percussion more. Or maybe they don't really want percussion to be a big part of it. They want to keep the percussion kind of nimble, fewer instruments. Maybe the clarinet player is really good at bass clarinet and really wants to have a bass clarinet feature. I don't know. So it's a big question mark. So for me to sit there and write the piece before I get to know the musicians, especially like I said, a chamber, small group, once that conversation happens, for me, that's when I will start to get ideas. Like the ideas will come. It's not like I have to find them. Like they will just come to me, which is the way I prefer it. The big thing with me is with this specific opportunity is that it gives me a window into learning more about what's going on in the big European centers. And I know that Utrecht and the Gaudeamus Festival in general is one of the big cultural music centers for contemporary music. And for me, I've been kind of cloistered in all the US conservatories. And it wasn't really until I went to Columbia University that I understood what was going on in Europe. My teacher, Georg Friedrich Haas, who's a big, especially lauded composer in Europe, and starting to learn what are the different composers that are working in Europe, who are the people my age, who are the people a few generations above me. So to start to become a part of that community as well is something really important to me, because I feel like a lot of the music that's done in Europe, there's this kind of strange cultural difference in the way that we approach music in the US versus how we approach, contemporary classical music in Europe. So to be part of Gaudeamus, which is to me at least, I've heard of Gaudeamus for the last 10 years as being one of the major festivals to learn about what's going on in general in Europe. It's a really big learning opportunity for me, actually. I'm not a planner. I had a conversation with one of my friends. She was saying, she has kind of a general plan for what she wants to do. I said, wow, I have no plan. I really getting this award, for example, I had no plan to get this award, and writing for Ensemble Hand Werk now, I had no plan. For me, it's just let it come as it goes as far as the creative side of it. I don't want to shackle myself to, I've always wanted to use this exact maqam in my piece, at some point, or whatever it is, or this form, or I want to write a piece based off of this singer at some point. These kind of very minute things where I want to write a symphony one day. These things don't enter my mind, because until they come, then the ideas will come, the ideas that make sense for that piece in that time. Creatively speaking, I'm not a planner. Let's put it that way. Honestly, I apply to everything. I really believe that one should apply to as many things that make sense for them as possible. So when I applied, I think I applied to this festival 10 years in a row or something. So, I always apply to these things, and if it happens, it happens. It's great. I'm very excited. But at the same time, if it doesn't happen, I move on to the next thing. So I plan to apply. I don't think beyond that. That makes sense. It's out of my control whether I get in or not, whether I win a contest or not, whether I get to work with so-and-so conductor or not. It really is out of my hands. If they want to work with me, that's great. But if they don't, I can't control it, So I'm fortunate this time that Gaudeamus wants to work with me. That's great. I'm very happy. But, a composer in general should plan these things, but when it comes time for the creative part of it, that thing, it's more elusive. At a certain point, you're going to get tired of it. This is a long-term thing we're doing as composers. If we're lucky, we get to keep writing for 40, 50 years. It's not like being a football player or something where we're done at 30, 35. So this is kind of the thing that I'm always thinking about these days. I'm assuming that many people watching this are composers themselves. And I just want to say for all the composers out there that, I've applied specifically to this festival for many years in a row, and this time I got it. So if this is a festival that you want to do one day, I would just say don't give up and keep writing music. But at the same time, this is not the only contest out there. You can always, there are so many things, there's so many opportunities out there as a composer. So I just want to give that message to anyone watching this, because it's really important to keep going as a composer. This is not a short-term project that we're doing. There is no one opportunity these days that will define your career as a composer. So my approach is have fun, make the most out of it, but don't put so much stock into any one thing that you're doing as a composer. And that includes this festival. Obviously, put your all into it. You know, that's not what I'm saying. Don't write a serious piece and all of this stuff, but don't put too much stock into any one opportunity. Oh, if I don't get this opportunity, that's the end of it for me. Oh, I need to work with this orchestra, or that's the end of it for me. No, this is not a way to approach, in my view, composition, in my view, of life as a composer. So this is just my message to any of the composers, especially watching.